Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another episode of the In Focus podcast, brought to you by the South Coast Artist Index and generously supported by Heavenly Spirits. As with every other guest, I'm going to ask our guests to introduce themselves and to spell their name. Yes?
Hi there. Yes, this is Christine Maiato FitzGerald. And Maiato, I assume you want me to spell that. That's the tricky one. It's M as in Mary, A, I as in Isaac, A, T as in Tom, O as in Oscar. And then my last name, FitzGerald, F as in Frank, I, T as in Tom, Z as in zebra, capital G as in George, ERALD.
So truly the son of Gerald. FitzGerald.
Yes.
Yep. Christine, believe it or not, well, if you go to Rhode Island, there's probably about 75 spellings of Christine as there is Lisa. So it's always good to ask. It's never good to assume, is it with a C? Is it with a K?
It is with a C. You're right.
Yeah.
CHRISTINE.
Yep. Yeah. Excellent. So I've been noticing you a lot on social media. You're in a very exciting place right now, obviously professionally, but also geographically. Mm-hmm. It was just a few years back when I was speaking with the former owner of the building, Steve Lefkowitz. His brother Larry was down in Florida and wanted nothing to do with the business any longer. And Steve and I had this discussion about proposing something to the city about turning the Kilburn Mill into an artist's location, artist studios and such. And Steve became ill. He found out he had cancer, sold the building, and the present owners took over with we're trying to find a nice word for vengeance, but I guess it was a vengeance. I mean, they just came in and really just started cleaning up the place, and it's been a continual endeavor, that's for sure. Let's start off with, why did you go to the Kilburn Mills? Why did you set up your studio there?
Well, we really wanted to have a place that was a little different than downtown. There wasn't a lot of foot traffic downtown. So we did look at a few places, but the Kilburn Mill had quite a buzz, and I noticed a lot of different, actually friends too, that were coming here and setting up shop here. And I thought, well, let's go take a look. My husband, actually, Sean, is the one that kind of prompted me to, because we were looking at different locations and I was still kind of stuck on downtown. But once I got here and saw all the goings on here and the art, the artist community here, I thought, yeah, this is the place to be. And it's still up and coming, as you're saying. It's quite the transformation. So that is, I was sold on the idea of the artist community here.
Yeah, it's probably the most unique facility. I mean, they have the rope walks, they have Hatch, but this one is pretty much like a art mall, or Sarah Folger, who was also on the show. She, as you know, she's the creative director for the Kilburn Mill
Yes.
Artisan Center. She said that it's gotten to the point where it is like a mall, that the hallways now, they're going to put street signs up for
That's
people
true.
to find places easier, more easily. And one of the biggest problems with the Kilburn at the very beginning, a friend of mine, gallerist and Chilean expatriate and artist, Luis Villanueva, had a gallery down there, And one of the biggest problems is that the Kilburn at that time was not a destination. The only reason why you're in the South End is because you've got business in the South End. You can't drive through the South End. You can drive down the point, around, and come back, but
there's only one way in and one way out.
Exactly. It's a terminal geographic location. So now it seems though that with all the activities going on in the mill, it's just sort of created its own vibe. And I think now with since this is for a historical fact, the Cisco Center just opened up where the old Davies Locker was on the other side of the point.
Yes.
Because you guys are on West Rodney French, and they're developing East Rodney French. So that seems as though it may be pulling some traffic in as well.
I believe so. Yes, and we're actually counting on that.
Okay.
So we'll see how it goes. But I don't know if you made your way down there yet to Cisco. It's a fabulous place that they got going there.
I heard it's standing room, lines and standing room only kind of thing.
Yes, and Sean and I went there last night at about 8 o'clock, and it was jammed. We barely squeaked by with two seats at the bar. So hopefully that's a sign of things to come. Yeah.
I mean, for years, people would leave this area and go to resorts or other countries and say, oh, blah, 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 blah. And somebody would always say, well, wow, we should try that here. Like, nah, never work. We just had that negative attitude about things. I lived in Figueira da Foz in Portugal for about a year. A lot of the fishermen come from Figueira da Foz, the fishermen here in New Bedford.
Oh, okay.
Small town, half the population. The dynamic nature of the place is just unbelievable. And it seems in that short time that I was gone, coming back, that New Bedford found its groove again. There's really a real breath of fresh air. Putting the promenade on top of the dike was a huge thing. The building that your studio is located in is another linchpin in this whole mechanism that's going on. So how are you doing so far there?
So far, so good.
Okay.
It's been 7 months. We opened in December 2020, which I know was brave. We had made preparations and then COVID hit. But yes, so far, so good. Well,
the old business gurus always say there is no best time, there's only the time. And you take
exactly.
it. So let's talk about you and your art. I'm always curious as to when people were bitten by the bug, so to speak, or when they had that moment of awareness, or that a moment of arrival, or the epiphany. So many people have so many different, there are the late bloomers, there are those that always knew. So what's your story?
So I would have to say I've always known, but I pushed it away for several different reasons, I suppose, whether it be financial or, I guess, get a real job kind of thing. Like a lot of artists, I started young in grammar school and was entered into art shows and things like that. And I would win a couple here and there. And my father is very much an artist. He never did anything with it, but he used to draw all the time. I remember his sketch pads, comic book inspired figures. And my mom she dabbled in painting and loves interior design and things like that. Never did anything with it except pretty much a hobby. But I always felt that, I got something here. So going on to junior high, I was still involved in it, but life happens and things happen, and I got away from it. I would say officially probably freshman year of high school. You know, you really got to buckle down and figure out what you're going to do. And again, that real job mindset. So I really got away from it then. And I did go to college for business. And I thought I loved it, and I didn't. I hated it. Hated it. So fast forward 18 years later, with still feeling this pull and this purpose of, you know, my art, and essentially ignoring, you know, the tap on my shoulder. I said, that's it. I'm going to do something here. You know, it's still really strong and feels like the right thing to do. So I enrolled at BCC. There initially the graphic design program, graphic arts, and an instructor there said, I don't know if this program's for you. I think you're more fine arts. He was absolutely correct. I barely work this phone, right? So I'm not really good at the tech stuff and computer graphics and things like that. And when I started to paint, it was my first painting class. And I just thought, okay, there's my aha moment right there. And I'd never painted before. Up until then, it was always drawing, whether it be landscapes or figures or things like that. And that was it. And I also am a photographer too. Those two, I can't pick which one I like more. So that's pretty much how it all started, and I haven't looked back.
The photography and the painting pretty much work hand in hand. That's for sure. Composition obviously ties them both together. In the elementary and secondary school, did you have any influence? Were any of your instructors an influence, or were there other people within the family that were influential to you?
Besides my mom and my dad, there was Mrs. LaHolmes. I remember Mrs. LaHolmes, and she was the one that wanted to put my Snoopy sketches in the art show.
Right.
And I ended up getting Snoopy down so perfectly to, I think, 4 strokes. And she would comment on that. Can you show me that again? And boom, 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 there's my Snoopy. And so I remember her being really happy about those and wanting to put them in the show. And she would come to me, I would say that started maybe 4th grade, 5th, and into 6th grade, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. It was Mrs. LaHolme that I would say besides my mom and my dad.
Was it Jean or was it Joanne LaHolme?
Oh, I don't remember. I remember her perfume though. I remember her perfume.
She passed away, I think, maybe 5-6 years ago, maybe. I think. Yeah, she was a fixture in the art community. That's for sure.
Oh, okay. And this would have been Abraham Lincoln School on Ashley Boulevard.
Ashley Boulevard, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now we fast forward, and you're doing what to support yourself?
Well, by day I'm a paralegal.
Okay.
And by night I'm an artist. That's what I like to say.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's we all have to deal with it. Either, I always used to say, well, if you want to be a painter, you better learn how to bartend or wait on tables. You have to have that portable skill. And some of us, make it. Some of us don't. I think a lot of it has to do with timing. And I think a lot of that timing has to do with surrender. I know it sounds kind of crazy and probably a little too philosophical, but you just have to surrender to the fear of, do you want it or don't you want it?
I understand that term, surrender. Yeah, I'm a yogi also, so I understand all that. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, the resistance is just, one of my instructors was the only Buddhist Quaker or Quaker Buddhist I've ever known. He was a remarkable man. He he just got me interested more into Eastern philosophy and such. And one of the things was, that surrender thing is the energy that you waste trying to hold on to something that's improbable or impossible would be better off kept by just letting go and not
Exactly.
wasting that energy and then using that energy for something else. So how does this yoginess, I mean, we can always figure out the paralegal stuff is pretty simple. I mean, there's a lot of contractual issues, copyrights and so on and so forth for the artwork, but we'll get back to that. How does the yoginess, so to speak, fit into your practice?
Well, talk about surrender. We opened in the middle of a pandemic, and I know most people wouldn't do that or even entertain the idea. And I just thought, let's just do this. And Sean was a big influence on that. But I don't think if I had my yogi background or my Buddhist studies behind me, I definitely wouldn't have done it. It would have been too fearful or stressful, or, the what if thinking would definitely kick in. So it plays a huge role in my decision-making to have an art gallery. It's already risky anyway, right? In any sense, it's probably one of the most riskiest businesses that you can try to formulate.
Yeah, that in a restaurant.
And that in a restaurant. I was just thinking that in a restaurant. So, but I never got fearful of it, which is amazing. Because if you asked me that 10 years ago, I'd say, you are crazy. I'm not doing that. So it has a huge role in being here. Absolutely. And I'm grateful.
Yeah, I think you're also part of the graduating class or the initial class of 2020 or 2019/2020, that the pandemic, as horrible as it was for 600,000 people and their families, also brought with it gifts.
Yes.
Heat, fire gives heat and burns at the same time. There are so many people who discovered another life or better life, or they can't figure out why is it I'm not working, but I haven't run out of money. Actually, I have a little bit more extra left over. So I think it's a huge reassessment, and
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get back to a mom and pop economy. We really need that local mom and pops.
We sure do.
Yeah.
We sure do.
So when was your first show? Not at your gallery, but your first, professional show.
My first professional show was at Gallery X in April of 2016. And it was a photography exhibit called Retribution Refuse. And that's interesting in its own right, because I really thought my first show would be a painting exhibit, but it turned out to be photography. And April of 2016. That was super, super exciting. And I really knew that I was on the right path.
Now, in formulating your business plan for your studio/gallery, what were some of the considerations that you had to ponder, other than the financial, obviously?
Yeah, location. Where are we going to do this? So, we know we're going to do this, but where are we going to do it? So that was hand in hand as big as the financial, for sure. Sure.
Now, the business model for is it a studio gallery? So you only exhibit your work, or you exhibit the works of others?
So both. So we have an artist of the month, which I'm happy to say that we are booked all the way until 2023. We're starting to book artists for 2023. And we usually, it's by invitation, but we have had people come in and actually asked to show with us, which is really exciting. And I'm like, well, the word's getting out. So we have a 1,000 square foot space. Is a combination of the artists of the month, the right side walls are for the artists of the month, and then the left side of the wall is all my work. And at the end of the gallery, where the windows, these beautiful windows are, is where my studio is. And then in the middle, we call it the middle or the gallery floor, is other local artisans that we have from New Bedford or surrounding areas.
Excellent. The idea of exhibiting other artists, was that a pent-up demand? Because that's another issue in town, and I've said this several times on the podcast, that even though somebody bandied about a $9 million economy, creative economy at some point, and with the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of artists that we have in town, the last viable commercial gallery, and I mean straight up New York style gallery, was Colo Colo on Center Street. And then, you know, when Luis moved over to Kilburn, the timing was off. It was both good and bad. I mean, the building that he was in on Center Street was sold out from under him, so to speak. He pulled in just at the right time to Kilburn, but Kilburn was, going through its evolutionary process to its first stage.
Right.
So there must be a pent-up demand for people who want to exhibit their work, and there seems to be more and more artists than I've ever. I don't think I could ever interview every single.
There is
5 days a week. Yeah.
The community is growing. It's just bursting at the seams. And I did see that. And being a member of Gallery X for the last several years, I'm still a member there. My husband and I actually are on the board now, and I owe a debt of gratitude to Gallery X. Hi, Sue. Hi, Chuck. Because that's where I got my start. And I knew that I wanted to have my own gallery at, someday. And here I am, I'm doing it. And I would think, wow, there's no one else doing what Gallery X does.
They're a teething ring for the arts community.
Yeah. You can become a member. And I just thought there's these kids out there that are tremendously talented. And we have had some kids come through here from UMass and BCC, and just, wow, how are they going to show their stuff at a particular, and the invite process is it's nerve-wracking. I don't have to tell you, they're so intimidating, and sometimes you don't do it. And what's it going to cost me? And so that is a big part of our mission here at MaiatoFitz Art is to get people to come in to show their stuff. We don't charge a rental fee for the wall. I can't do it. I can't bring myself to do it. Mm-hmm. So if there's pieces that are sold, okay, we'll take a commission, but to charge artists on top of fees, and there's no submission fees. There's nothing like that. I mean, we do have bills to pay, but we're trying to help artists that are emerging to show their stuff, give them a chance, because it could be that they get discovered here. Who knows? Yeah,
you don't know. I mean, you're trying to give yourself a leg up, and at the same time, you give someone else a leg up, and because of that, you become, in the center of all of the good graces, because you quote unquote discovered them. I was on Facebook. I said something to Sarah Folger about what we need is a biennale in New Bedford, because a biennale sounds so much cooler now than just Art Basel. Art Basel's pretty much it's become, well, a lot of the art shows, art fairs, they're like just glorified flea markets. There are other top end ones, but there's just so many of them now that and I think it requires a little audacity to have a biennale, and to South Coastal, whatever is going to predicate that. Because, yeah, juried, you want people, you've got the locals and then you have the away people. They're juried as well. Not very, very complicated, but just to show the plethora of work across the scale, mixed in with people from out of town as well. But just, if you don't know who is who, you can't tell the difference from, if they're from near or away, far away.
True.
Because, we need more selling opportunities within town. The old 80-20 rule of business and sales seems to apply, that anyone who's surviving is more than likely 80% of their income is coming from outside of the area.
Mm.
So I don't know if that holds true for your gallery and studio, but that's, I spent decades in marketing and advertising, and also teaching marketing and advertising at the Charlton College of Business. So sometimes it's hard to take off the marketing hat, but this is a very perplexing industry, and I think we have to recognize that the art community is an industry, not just a bunch of happy stone people playing with paint.
Yeah. I agree. Yes.
Yeah. So where do you go from here?
Up. There's no ceiling. I just want to keep going. My ultimate goal would be to drop the law office and do this full time. That's the ultimate goal. And I would like to continue my studies as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a little easier to do, but I'll get there. I have that yogi sense, and, take the path of least resistance is usually the best way to go. So this is how it is right now. So it's fine. This is where I should be.
Yeah. It's funny when you said yogi a couple of times, I just had Pandaji jumped into my mind. My friend Pandaji, who's Yogi Ramsamuj. I haven't seen him in a while, and got to get to the Ayur Shri to get some good Indian food. It's been too long. Those things just run through your head like like a marble. Now I got to really focus. Your work. So, what labels would people hang on you? Are you an abstract artist? Are you and the labels are all kind of screwed up anyway to begin with.
Yeah.
Contemporary just means, okay, it doesn't mean modern. It means you're living. And people think, oh, contemporary means modern. No, it doesn't. This guy does all the boats in water. This woman does kittens and balls of yarn. They're both contemporary artists, right?
I have heard the word conceptual thrown around a lot when it comes to my work, whether it's photography or my painting. That's the word that I've heard a lot.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which makes sense to me. It makes sense to me, but I try not to put a label on myself. It is fine if others do, but I try not to do that, because I think I'm just constantly evolving. Like right now, my latest painting series is all about, I love texture. I have a real crazy love of texture. And so I just did a series of textures, different colors, and I'd never really worked with acrylic paint before. And I just went bananas with experimenting and not putting a label on anything. Like whatever happens, happens. And so are these conceptual paintings? Possibly.
Well,
maybe.
Everything is everything is conceptual.
But then you go back to that, sure. So, and of course, art is subjective. So maybe some people would say, oh no, that's not conceptual. So it's.
Yeah, even objective art is subjective. See what I mean? It's the labels are just like really, really screwed up.
Yeah, they're kind of silly in some ways.
Yeah. And we do that with everyone. I mean, we do
Yeah.
that with people. By gender, by race, by height, by hair. Hair texture. I mean, it's just like the most bizarre thing.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's because that's the way our brains process or not. Does any of the Buddhist the pillars, any of the thoughts come into your work at all? Or is it always present versus being present for it?
That's a really interesting question. I would have to say I try to be as present as much as possible, but sometimes you're just not. That's the honest answer. So I would say yes and no. I would say yes and no.
Some days yes, some days no.
Some days yes, some days no.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the monk Mookie?
No.
Mookie did a very bad thing for a monk. He did a painting, which wasn't allowed.
Right.
This was 15th century, I think. And that instructor I had. Do you know Alma Cummings?
Yes.
Okay, her dad, Herb Cummings. He's the guy I blame for everything, with a wink. But he did a lecture, and I don't ever remember any other lecture from him. He was a painting instructor, but he was really, really taken by Mookie and the 6 persimmons. And when I saw, I mean, I was sitting there like, oh my God, I love Herb, but is he ever going to shut up? And it took forever. It was like percolating coffee, And then when it hit like all the bricks on the building fell on top of me to see, oh my God, the relationships of these two is different from the relationships of these two. But if you take this one, which is larger than these two, they're actually a relationship by size, not by individual size, but the size of space that they're taking up. And it just went,
wow.
It just went, completely nuts. That's what kept me going a little bit on, doing the abstract work. That it really was painting nothing. I wasn't trying to replicate anything, but I was just trying to, like, why do people sit and watch water?
Right. It's all a form of meditation, really. I mean, that's how I see it. I am definitely in a meditative state when I'm painting, and or photography too, whatever it may be that I'm trying to create. And it's fascinating how hours will go by and geez, I haven't had a morsel to eat. That's how you get in that zone. And so it's the same idea.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember one particular instance. It was in undergraduate school. It was SMU back then. In the senior painting studio, and I think it was there. It doesn't really matter. There was a sandwich and a cup of coffee, and I just remember grabbing the sandwich. How you feel around when you're looking at your work, and then it's like, I don't remember the bread being so dry. That's kind of weird, And then I went to go get the coffee. Like, the coffee's cold. It was just like steaming hot. I mean, I looked at the clock, and I was like, 3 hours have gone by. I took a sip and a bite, and that was it.
Been there, done that. Yes, I know.
Now I'm curious about out of body experiences while painting. And what I mean by out of body is that you literally are watching yourself paint, and you are conscious that you're watching yourself paint, and you actually have no control except to just continue watching yourself paint.
Well, I can't wait for that to happen, Ron. I cannot wait for that. That has not happened yet.
Really? It is kind of a bizarre, it's kind of a bizarre but wonderful thing.
Oh,
it's almost like you've been possessed, that's kind of a negative word, or none of the words are good for that. Taken over, whatever.
Yeah, taken over, right.
Right. But it's a very interesting thing. And I remember when I was teaching art history, I used to tell my students that the first shaman were painters. And that they were closer to that concept of God or Godhead than anyone else. It wasn't because they were painters, but because they were so close spiritually to this Godhead, that they were able to render things, natural and supernatural.
Right.
And I still think that there's this incredible spirituality that's involved with it. It's almost, sounds crazy, but in some cases even like Ouija, where you have no control over what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I know in flamenco, I think it's called duene, where the flamenco dancer spins into such a state of ecstasy that they're no longer conscious of where they are, what they're doing, in their own bodies.
Oh, wow.
So that's it. It's kind of interesting. The whole spiritual thing has always been interesting. So where's your work at now? In other words, are you like evolving into another series of work? You're talking about textures. Are you thinking, oh, maybe I want to go paint boats in water?
That is something I've never done. Boats and water and lighthouses and kittens and puppies.
Yeah.
I've never really
coastal New England art. There's a label.
Yeah, I know. And it's great. It's just, it's not my thing. And I don't see myself ever painting anything like that, but it could change.
Oh,
so it could change. And, we'll see what happens, but I'm not sure. I just finished this series maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. So I have a few ideas for certain things, but I really couldn't tell you what they are because I really don't know.
Do they just pop to the surface by themselves?
What's that?
Do they just pop to the surface by themselves? In other words, you don't have to force it up. There are some people have, like this blockage thing. It's like, never had that. Been too tired to go to the easel, but never not, able to paint.
I just kind of let it happen. And it's the weirdest things that inspire me or just pop up, as you say. I did one of my paintings that's in this texture series. Something was missing from it and I wasn't sure what it was. So I usually have 4 or 5 paintings going at once. So I just left it. I'm like, I'll get back to it. And Sean and I were watching one of the hockey games. And there was an aerial view of the ice with all the skate marks back and forth. And I said to him, that's it. That's what's missing from that painting. I need to scrape it. I need to put those lines in it. And he's just looking at me like, okay, he's kind of used to me being a little weird like that. And I said, that's it. And I went to the studio, whatever it was, the next day, and I did it. And I went, okay, now it's finished. That's what was. So it's weird where when these things do pop up, sometimes we'll be watching TV or a commercial will be somewhere or whatever it is. And I'll see a combination of colors that I really like. And I'll jot them down because I don't want to forget. And I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with those colors, but I know that I absolutely must take note of it at that moment because I'm going to do something with it.
Well,
that happens all the time.
Other than exploring this from an artistic point of view, how about let's explore it from more of a Zen point of view? Why do you think that is? Because I really believe in this connectedness thing. It's just, there are some things that happen. Like if you, I've mentioned this.
I believe it too.
Forrest Gump. Some people think it's a riot, blah, blah, blah. It's not very serious, but there's like an incredible amount of seriousness in that movie. It took the guy 20 years to write that book. And this thing about being in the same place at the same time, at the right time, and that there has to be some connectivity to this.
There absolutely is, and I'm convinced of it, and I've seen it happen. I manifested this gallery. I've been manifesting it and just letting things happen, and I've learned to follow my tuition intensely, not ignore it. So even something as small as, oh, I really like that combination of colors, wherever it may be, I don't ignore those things anymore. And they do end up reflecting in my art, and I can tell the story later, even though maybe at that moment, I may not know exactly what I'm going to do, but I know the universe is tapping me on the shoulder saying, hey, pay attention to this. And I do. And it definitely has an influence in my work. somehow, some way it shows up.
Yeah, that's an interesting analogy of the universe tapping you on the shoulder.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thank Herb for giving me that insight to that, because for some people it's there, it's not there, you know, that's for sure. Now, are you technique, what's the word? Well, crazy, because I know there are some people who it's all approached by technique. They want to see what happens if they do this, if they do that. They're always looking for new techniques, new accidents, you know, that they can control afterwards. Some people do preparatory sketches, which for an abstract painter, I always found a bit odd that you do preparatory sketches, and then what are you going to do? Make a painting of a sketch? When you
Right.
when you get the right sketch, or the final, but that's my way.
I think the same way you do. I didn't prep anything for this series at all. I just literally went with every painting, however it was going to come out. And were there times I was frustrated because I wanted it to come out a certain way? Yes, there's countless hours. I don't have to tell you, countless hours I thought, and I realized that didn't come out that way because it wasn't supposed to come out that way.
You were fighting it.
Right. And that's when and that was early on in the series. And I said, yeah, I'm not doing that. It's not meant to be that way. And I don't have to, it doesn't have to be this way. And it's not going to be that way. So early on in that, painting the series, I totally let that go. And I just experimented. And I said, that's what this series is. It's textured colors and abstract and exploration. That's it. That's the name. That's what's happening. They're all going to be completely different because it's an exploration and it's experimentation. And I just started, once I got to that point, like I said, it was very early on. I started taking acrylic mediums and mixing it with oil paints and watching the effect of whatever it was going to do. I didn't know what it was going to do, but when it made whatever that effect was, it was perfectly fine with me because I had no expectations. And I'm going to try to keep that going for the future too, whatever I create. No expectations, because that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's how it came out.
Yeah.
And is that a universe thing? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not trying to put a label on myself or, oh, it's supposed to be like this and it's supposed to come out. Nah, just let it go. Just let it go.
Do you have any bad paintings? Because one of the things that I had discussions with colleagues, people that we're still in touch that graduated from SMU in '75 with our BFAs. I don't paint over paintings. If I don't like it, I leave it alone, because to me it's a reminder of what I shouldn't do, and to paint it over seems to be missing the whole point. I may not like it, but somebody else may. What's that?
I have paintings that I have kept and I don't like, and it hurts to look at them. And even photography too. I have some photographs that I'm not happy with. Yeah. But the starving artist thing is true. So there may be some paintings, some canvases that I thought, yeah, I'm going to use that. But it's also because maybe there's something about that painting that maybe it doesn't look good right now. I don't like it now, but I can do something else to it that I will like it. And maybe there's some texture on it that I want to play with that I didn't notice before, and totally change it up. So I almost like doing that better, painting over old paintings that I don't like, because it gives it's the rebirth really. And it just gives it a sense of purpose, because now, okay, this is maybe again, that's where it's supposed to be. Yeah.
Again, it's right back to that whole thing, approaching the canvas with a concept, and I think we evolve, whether we realize it or not. We have to, I talk about the voices of the voice. If you say voices, people get frightened. I think about the voice in the head that says, no, not that green, this green. no,
Mhm.
you know, this, no, yes, yeah. So I feel guided, you know.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes.
And then, you know, remembering when I had a concept, and then as soon as I got to the canvas, the concept was totally out the window. I couldn't grab it. It was like clouds, you know, trying to grab clouds, and then realizing the three marks, which is kind of Zen. There's the first mark, which is the act of destruction, because Picasso said an act of creation first requires an act of destruction. So now you got one mark. And then the second mark that you create now forms a relationship with that first one. And it just rolls on. The last mark is probably just as important. That's the one where that is the last mark. You walk away, you know, leave it alone. And that's what happens with a lot of us, is that sense of imbalance where one more. And it's like, oh, why did I
Yes.
do that?
You need to know when to stop.
Yeah,
Yes.
you don't
and
have
that's
a return
tricky.
to previous version button like you do on your computer, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. This summer you have shows set up. So your agenda is already full. You said you've got people booked till up to 2023. Your studio gallery. You also show artisan work, so some, you know, three-dimensional works.
Yes.
Artisan is a much better term than craftsman.
Yes. I always use that word.
Fortunately, real craftsmen get irritated because, you know, that's a term that's been stolen away from them. But then people are just don't want to equate crafts with, and I don't get in trouble for this, toilet paper, crocheted toilet paper covers, you know, you know,
Right.
that kind of thing. So, you know, having a background that you do, I mean, you do have to look into that crystal ball and try to see. You know, you can't walk a road by looking down at your feet, because you'll get in trouble. You have to trust your feet to know where they're going and just look ahead. So, with that in mind, any ideas of what's next? What's next?
Well, we'll see. I just kind of go with it. I mean, we want to continue. That's the honest question. Just to continue making art and exhibiting other people's art as much as possible, exposing, you know, new and upcoming artists. You know, if you're talented, we want you. We don't care what the medium is or anything like that. And I think that we're booking into 2023, the word's getting out and people know that. So we would just like to continue on this path and just keep it going. That's my dream anyway. So
Yeah. How has your interaction with these other artists helped you as an artist?
ooh, that's a great question. Well, we had an artist here of the month in March, Stryker. I don't know if you know Stryker.
Yes. Jeff came out of the blue, I think,
Yes.
about 10 years ago. I mean, totally out of left field. He could have owned the town. I think he was
Yes.
kind of stunned by what happened. And then there
Yes.
were issues in his life that he had to deal with. You know, I believe it was from the family. I mean, you know, family first. And then he sort of, I don't know if that affected him, but he sort of went quiet.
He did.
Then the next time he pops up is he has a stroke.
Right.
And, you know, that is tough enough to deal with. And now he's
back, baby.
reborn. Yeah, he's in a second manifestation now. Trying to get him on the show, because he was one of the first people that I interviewed when this used to be just an article, you know, like a magazine article.
Yeah.
Yeah. What drives him?
He talk about the universe and just going with the flow. He's a natural with that. I mean, I know he's had his struggles since he had his stroke, but he's creating more now, it seems, than ever. We have a little setup in our shop. He's one of we call him his artist resident here at MaiatoFitz Art. But soon enough, I think I can say this because he's posted it, but he and his daughter are going to be neighbors of ours right across the way, right across the hall.
Yeah.
So his color palette, I was immersed in his show for a whole month. And there is one painting or two paintings that I did paint that I know are striker colors. That's what I call them. They're striker colors. And without realizing it, he had an influence on me with his colors. And I can't stop looking at the artist that we have now, Linda Broderick, for this month. Her paintings are phenomenal. Again, the color palette is very bright, very rich, with blues and reds, and I guess kind of similar to Stryker. But I think they also influenced me in content too. Like Lydia, they're all portraits for the most part. And I haven't touched a portrait in about 10 years, maybe a little less. But maybe she'll inspire me to do that. We'll see. I won't know until her show was over.
Yeah.
And see what influence it had on me.
It's cross-pollination. I mean, there's also there was this theory a few years ago with child psychologists that a child that grows up in a bedroom that has a lot of bookshelves, is just filled with books, even if they've never read a book or had one read to them, has an advantage over a child who slept in a room with no books at all. I know it sounds a little far-fetched, but
no, I think it's because it's human nature, curiosity. What is that? And you're gonna check it out.
Yeah.
It's just human nature. You're going to check it out. So no, I agree with that statement. It's not crazy or far-fetched at all.
And then there's those, influences and experiences, even though, some people growing up in a household where the parents were creative, or in a family that's creative, or being taken to places that, museums and galleries, as in my case, or just the exposure to it. And it's amazing. The child absorbs all that information. And then
for me as a child, art was, yes, I was influenced by my dad's sketches, but it was also an escape for me. Talk about art therapy. My parents didn't stay together and all that stuff. So I would just go up to my room and I would draw for hours, and I'd have the radio on. Music is a huge part of my life too. Music and art really saved me from who knows. But I just remember, again, talking about zoning out and being in a meditative state. I remember as a young girl being up in my room and just drawing, and all of a sudden look outside the window and it's dark out. Yeah. And I realize I've been here how long? I'm hungry. Now I realize I'm hungry,
Yeah. It's an amazing, lifestyle. I don't know if there's an amazing existence.
Existence, good word. Yes.
Yeah. And existence is not like what a lot of people think, you've got tubes coming out of you and you're just like a vegetable.
Right.
Existence is really, really important. So we talked about your beginnings. We talked about your artwork up to the current, talked about the studio and being influenced by the people who hang in your studio. Anything else that's whispering in your ear right now for the future? I mean, that you're a business person, so obviously you're not gonna let any cats out of the bag. Anything that that you've had either an epiphany or a corner of the eye kind of experience, where you see something clearer from the corner of your eye than you do straight on?
Well, I could say, without giving anything away, that this art gallery studio is only one part of the business plan. So everybody needs to stay tuned to see what we have next.
Oh, good. That sounds good. And want to wrap this up. So let's see what provoking question, thought-provoking question. Well, I ask you. Well, I might as well ask. It's a pretty standard question. how would you like to be remembered?
Oof, wow. Maybe as an artist who truly cared about people, not just about her art, and wanted to, show love and support for fellow artists and hopefully, get them exposed in one way or the other. And so they can cultivate their own dreams and follow their own path.
Okay. Any final questions, quips, quotes, queries, comments?
My favorite quote is, "It's never too late to be who you might have been," from George Eliot. That is my favorite quote, and I have that in my head every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I want to wrap it up.
All right. Thank you so
you.
much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Once again, I'd like to thank our guest for being on this episode, Christine Maiato FitzGerald.
That's it.
And I also want to thank our sponsor, Heavenly Spirits, and remind you that being a realist does not necessarily mean you're a pessimist. It's still not perfect out there. Let's just learn what we've, use what we've learned from this last 18 months or so of pandemic, and continue to be nice to each other and take it from there. So until the next time, thank you and goodbye.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Be the artist you believe you are, and let's take care of each other out there.